In today's video, we are looking at the new Alcatel OneTouch Popstar LTE. This is another LTE device from Straight Talk. I think this is like the third or fourth LTE device within the last month or two that they've put out. Now the thing to note on this LTE phone is that this is an AT&T device, so it's a GSM device. It'll work on the AT&T network. The specs on this guy are 4-inch touchscreen, Android 4.3, 1.2 gig quad-core processor, 5 megapixel main camera, and a 1 megapixel front-facing camera. Now, I think the thing of note on this particular phone is that as of right now, I think it's one of the least expensive LTE phones you can get from Straight Talk. This one comes in at $149.99. Now, the thing about this phone is that it falls under that kind of nicely sized category because it's a 4-inch screen. It's not too terribly big, and it's not so small that you can't, type on the thing. So I think this is an excellent little phone for the money, particularly if you're looking for an affordable 4G LTE device. Now we'll go ahead and measure this thing for you so you can get an idea of the size. Again, this is a 4-inch screen measured diagonally, and there we have 3.94 or so. On the width, we have 2.51. The height, we have 4.8, and then the thickness, we have about 0.37 or so. So the dimensions are nice, and that again, this phone's not too big and not too small. Now on the design, one of the odd things about this phone is that there is no real bezel around the screen, because this is one of those type of phones where the battery cover has the buttons incorporated into it. So when you remove the battery cover, you're actually removing these buttons as well. So there's no true bezel on this phone. It's all this battery cover that you see, and it's of that kind of rubberized type material. So it's actually quite velvety feeling, really smooth feeling. And there's the digital camera. It does have an LED flash. But continuing on the design, of course you have the 3 Android button layout. These are backlit. If you buy this phone, you have to enable that because it's not enabled out of the box for some reason. So you have to turn those on for that to backlight. There's your front-facing camera. That's a 1 megapixel unit, I believe. And then the rest of the stuff is in fairly typical positions. There's the headphone jack on the top left. There's the power/lock on the top right. There's the volume, and then the charge port is at the bottom. Now, this being an entry-level device, it is all plastic construction. If you're looking for something a little bit high-end, then I would recommend taking a look at the ZTE Rapido, which I also reviewed recently. The difference between that one and this one is that one is a Verizon device, but it is a bit more high-end than this one, and it only costs like $30 more. But as far as the Google stuff on this thing goes, it's all pretty standard. You get all the standard Google apps like Android, Gmail, Google Maps, which I'll show you real quick. And this phone does have a nice and fast processor, so maneuvering around the phone is fast. It's very responsive. The one thing I have noted, which is kind of typical on these plastic screen devices, is that there's a little bit of friction when you do this kind of thing on the screen, and I think that's just because of the plastic, the nature of the plastic of the screen. There's a little bit more resistance on your finger than there would be on a glass screen, but this one's not too bad. On some of the plastic screened ZTE phones, the resistance is very noticeable. On this phone, it's a little bit, but it's not too bad. But as you can see, the phone performs very well on the maps. It zooms in without a problem. That's a good indicator that you get pretty good performance on the phone. Now moving on to the rest of the Android stuff. Of course, you have the Google Play Store, which, as usual, you'll need a Google account to download the apps. It's wide open to you, so it's not restricted by Straight Talk in any way. You can download any free or paid app that your heart desires. And then lastly, we'll show you YouTube. The multimedia experience on this phone is not bad. The screen being on the smaller side of things, it's not quite, the resolution isn't quite as good as it is on some of the larger phones, like 4.5, 5-inch screens. But I think it does look pretty good in person. Probably can't really appreciate it on the video, but the quality of the video is good. Now, one thing I'm a bit disappointed in is the sound quality on this. It's got a little bit of that tin can sound to it, so that's a bit on the disappointing side of things. And then lastly, we'll just show you the texting keyboard and a few other things here, so you get an idea of the size of the keys. Here's the texting interface, and here's the keyboard. The icons on this one, when in portrait, are on the small side, but when you put it in landscape, they're quite easy to text with. And this one can be set up with swipe. When you first set up the phone, you can pick swipe as a keyboard. The icons are nicely sized on this particular phone. And then lastly, I guess we'll show you the phone dialer here, which is your typical interface for the dialer. Nicely sized buttons. So I think that about wraps it up on this particular phone. There's nothing extraordinary about it, considering they've kind of rolled out, like, 4 LTE devices within a month and a half or 2 months, if you will, the more basic of the bunch of the LTE phones that they've released lately. But it's not a bad phone, and I think it is the least expensive phone. So if you're on a budget and you want an LTE phone, then this isn't a bad selection. Do keep in mind that you need AT&T though for your LTE coverage to work.